Okay, let's take a look at Romeo's first lines in the play on page 3. And by the way, before we really get into this, I would recommend watching the movie and maybe printing off a copy of the play. You probably don't have a printer, but you're gonna have to. You may need some way to. Well, I don't know what to tell you. I guess I don't know. Printer, multiple screens. Do you have these things? Probably not. I don't have a printer. Um, so I don't know. So we're just gonna look. I don't know. We're gonna do our best to figure this out. I don't know what to tell you. If you have more than one computer, you could watch this on one screen, and you can have it over there. You could even maybe shrink this in the corner. I don't know. It's just teaching online is ridiculous. Um, as soon as I get the chance to not teach online, I'm going to get right back in a physical classroom because this is depressing. Okay. I'm also, by the way, teaching. It's in the rain. I'm cold. Whatever. I love you guys. Romeo and Juliet. Let's take a look at Romeo's opening lines in the play because they're kind of awesome. In the movie, when we first meet Romeo, he is in Leonardo DiCaprio's Romeo. He is hanging out by there's been a fight. There's a whole fight scene where the two families are at war, and so one of the first things you see in the play is the two families fighting with each other. Then they introduce Romeo, right? And he will eventually fall in love with Juliet, and then he'll realize, oh my God, she's in the other family that my family's at war with, and then all the tragedy or doom or whatever you want to call it. So with Romeo, it's I want to focus on his first words in the play because they're real interesting to me. They're kind of ridiculous. In the movie, there's a fight going on between the two families, and Romeo's not involved. And then one of the guys from the fight, Benvolio, who is Romeo's good friend, his best friend, Benvolio goes to find Romeo. Romeo did not participate in the fighting. Romeo was sitting by the beach writing poetry about love. And Romeo's first lines are really interesting. They're silly in a way that it can kind of be hard to understand. It's the joke. There's a joke in here that's kind of hard to see. These are Romeo's first lines in the play. I'm at the top of page 3. Romeo says, right, Benvolio comes to talk to Romeo, and he's not really paying attention. Benvolio says, what sadness lengthens Romeo's hours? Like, why are you so sad, buddy? He says, not having that which having makes them short. Right? Like if I was in love, it would make time fly quickly, but I feel like life is too long because I'm not. I don't have the person that I love. But there's a playfulness to this. What sadness lengthens Romeo's hours? Not having that which having makes them short. In love, out of love, out of her favor, where I am in love. Do you see how they're playing word games? Their joke, there's different meanings here. Romeo says, boy, I'm so depressed, life seems too long. And the guy says, what sadness lengthens Romeo's hours? He says, not having that which having makes them short. Right? If I was in love, time would go fast. In love, out. Of love, out of her favor, where I am in love. So he's depressed because he loves a woman and he's out of her favor. She doesn't love him back. One of the interesting details in this play that I always think about is at the beginning of the play, Romeo's in love as soon as we see him. He's in love the moment we meet him. But he's not in love with Juliet. He's never met Juliet. He's in love with this woman named Rosaline. Now, Rosaline is not really in the movie, and she's not in the play. She's just Romeo is in love with this random girl. He just thinks she's the best. And he loves her, but she doesn't love him back. And he's writing her this love poetry, and she doesn't care. And that's the beginning of the play. We meet him and he's in love, and he will go to a party where she's going to be at because he just wants to get a glimpse of her, and that party is the party where he meets Juliet and he realizes what real love is, and as soon as he meets Juliet, he forgets all about this Rosaline person. It's interesting, by the way, that in our society we'll often call somebody a Romeo. And what we mean by that is they're often, to call somebody a Romeo means to say that they're in love with lots of people, right? They seem to go from woman to woman to woman to woman to, oh, you're a real Romeo, loving all those ladies. But it's fascinating because this is actually to me, that's funny that we say that. We'll call somebody a Romeo if they're dating, a couple of women at the same time, or they keep dating a new woman every time you see them. They go, oh, what a Romeo you are with these women. But Romeo, this is a very small part of Shakespeare's Romeo, is that when you meet him, he's in love with one person, then he meets someone else, and he's in love with Juliet. And that's it. But for some reason, we use the word Romeo to mean switches affections quickly and easily, which is actually a pretty small part of Shakespeare's Romeo's character. And that's, we call people, when you call somebody, oh, they're like a real Romeo seducing all these women, they're getting it from Romeo and Juliet. But Romeo is actually not really like that. I mean, he is in love with one person and he switches, but like that's over pretty quickly. I don't know. That's not his defining characteristic. It's really interesting to me that we say that. The fact that he changes from one girl to another, for a lot of people, is the only thing they remember about the guy, which is that he goes from one woman to the next pretty quickly. So let's talk about his language in this scene. Romeo, Benvolio says, alas that love, so gentle in his view, should be so tyrannous and rough in proof. Meaning love should be a good thing. It's so sad that you're in love and it's making you feel terrible. And then Romeo gives this big speech, not a big speech, but he gives a speech about it. And it's very confusing, but we're going to do it anyway. He says, alas that love, like isn't it sad that love, whose view is muffled still. Sometimes Cupid is shown as being blindfolded. Um, Cupid is shown as being blindfolded because the idea is that you fall in love and it's like you didn't even pick the person. Like Cupid's blindfold and hits you with an arrow when you fall in love. It feels random. The blindfold is supposed to encourage this sense of being random, like because you don't even know what he's shooting at. And Romeo says, alas that love, whose view is muffled still, should without eyes see pathways to his will. Where shall we dine? So Romeo hasn't looked up yet. He's in the movie. He's still working on his poems or whatever, and says this thing about Cupid not having a blindfold and how crazy it is. But then suddenly he looks at Benvolio and sees the violence. Right? Maybe Benvolio might be bleeding a little bit, or maybe he sees on the news. I think in the movie he sees in the news there was a fight, and he interrupts himself. He says, but the first thing he says is, oh boy, it's so sad that love is so crazy. Alas, that love, whose view is muffled still, should without eyes see pathways to his will, right? Even though he's blindfolded, he still gets the job done. Where shall we dine? Oh, me, what fray was here? Fray means fight. Like he notices there's been a big fight today. Oh, me, what fray was here? Yet tell me not, for I have heard it all. Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. Why then, O brawling love, O loving hate, O anything of nothing first create? O heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, still waking sleep that is not what it is. This love I feel, that feel no love in this. Dost thou not laugh? No, cuz, I'd rather weep. Good heart at what? At thy good heart's oppression. This is an extremely confusing thing to follow, unless you know a little bit about what Shakespeare's making fun of something here, but you don't know what it is because it's old and we don't really do this anymore. But there's a thing called paradox, which is when something is somehow two opposites at the same time. So Romeo is discussing. It's an intellectual game that people write poems where when you try. Let's start this over. Blah, blah, blah. Trying again. When you're trying to describe something hard to describe, oftentimes you end up in paradoxes. For example, a really simple paradox is that life seems to me to go so fast. It's so fast. Like I'm 41, and like I feel like I was 20 recently. Like, movies that I'll tell somebody about a movie and they're like, I don't know that movie. And I'm like, that's a recent movie. And then I'm like, oh shit, no, it's not. Like, I love Kill Bill, but that movie came out like 18 years ago, 17 years ago. I'm like, oh shit, that was a long time ago. Like, in my mind, I think of The Matrix as being like kind of a recent movie, but it's not. It came out in 1999. Of course, it's not a recent movie. It's 21 years old. So I feel like life goes really fast. Also, I feel like life goes really slow. Like I'm trapped in quarantine here, and it just feels like every day is the same, and there's no progress. And sometimes I'm just like, man, I wish this would end. How long is this going to go on for? So if you've ever had this experience where life sometimes seems like it goes fast and slow at the same time, like if somebody says, "Boy, life goes fast," you'll be like, "Yeah, that's true." And if you go, "Man, like life is so slow. I can't believe I'm still this. I can't believe I'm still in math class. How many more minutes do I have until I can fucking get out of here? I can't believe I'm still at BMCC. When am I going to graduate?" So life can feel both fast and slow at the same time. And that's what Romeo's talking about. So that's time. It's a paradox. Sometimes time feels very fast and very slow at the same time. Yeah, okay. What Romeo is doing, that's time. Time goes somehow both fast and slow at the same time. Romeo is trying to describe love. And he ends up in similar paradoxes where he says things that are both. So just a really simple example is love makes you feel light. When you're in love, you're happy, you're giddy, you're excited. Love is very light feeling. But also, love is very heavy feeling because it's serious and intense and you can't stop thinking about this other person. And that's a paradox. How can it make you feel both light and heavy at the same time? And so Romeo mentions that paradox and a bunch of other ones too, because it's a way of describing something in a complicated, poetic way.